Okay, guys, I'll kick things off, I think. So welcome to the Show Me the App Money session. Hopefully going to be looking at potentially one of the biggest challenges and opportunities that we face in publishing at the moment, and that's monetizing both app and mobile. So the way I've kind of split the session, we're going to do around 10 minutes, so I'm just going to run through a short presentation with you to cover some of the key points. And then I have an esteemed panel joining me today to open that discussion up. And then around 5 minutes towards the end of the session, we're going to open it up to you guys for questions. Just by way of a quick introduction, my name's Jonathan Kitchen, as you can all read, I'm sure. I head up an agency called Adnostic, and I also run the commercial app strategy for Dennis Publishing. By way of a quick introduction, the panel from left to right, we have Matt White, who's the creative director for Adnostic, Guy Phillipson, who's the CEO of the IAB, and Abby Spooner, who heads up the direct marketing part of the week. So again, once we go to the panel session, I'll let them introduce themselves in a bit more detail. Okay, so as I say, really what we're going to be talking about today is really monetizing apps, publishing apps, and also mobile. So just by way of a bit of an introduction to it all, one of the things that we're all really looking at the moment is this idea of a new publishing landscape. And the key to that is too many screens, or in a way, it's too many devices. So, you know, current stats in the UK, 40% tablet ownership, 70% smartphone ownership. What does that mean for publishers? It means you've got a lot of different ways of getting your content and your advertising out to your customers, your users, and your readers. And it's really, really important now because users will consume when they are given devices. So it's important they're able to get great content on them. So publishers have to be able to take their content and push it out to these different devices. So that's kind of one of the first things that's radically changed in the last kind of 4 to 5 years. The next point, I don't really need to labour this, declining print newsstand circulations are a fact largely across the market, but what it does actually mean for publishers, it's a more and more of a focus on subscribers, because they're your kind of lifetime customer for any kind of publishing brands. So yes, newsstand is more challenging, but it's about increasing subscription, and that's where kind of apps mobile really, really fits in. Moving on to the next thing, it's really growing but fragmented digital audiences. So we all know across the board, there are significant numbers of users now that potentially will move maybe from reading a magazine to viewing the content on a website or an app. But actually, because of the number of screens that they can consume this content on, they're becoming more and more fragmented. They can get the content in the way they want. And again, publishers have to be very, very conscious of that. And then finally, if you kind of pull all of those points together, it really creates a demand for relevant, innovative, targeted content across all platforms. And that really is the big challenge for publishers in the kind of new app economy. So that's really, really important for everyone as a kind of consideration. So thinking about how that kind of make publishers feel, I was trying to think of a decent kind of image for it, so I thought Grumpy Cat kind of summarised it really well. Working in a digital production business and an agency, you see a lot of memes on a daily basis on the team. They're always firing them backwards and forwards, and Grumpy Cat still comes up a lot. But that is kind of how publishers often feel about this, because it is a huge challenge. There's a lot to consider. So what I've kind of pulled together in this kind of short presentation, the first sort of 10 minutes of the session, are just considerations, thoughts about how you can kind of tackle this and turn it into more of an opportunity. And this is all from our kind of experience, both on the Dennis Publishing side and also on the Adnostic side as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go through. So moving on from kind of Grumpy Cat, to the new newsstand. So thinking about this, publishers are very, very used to the idea of a newsstand being somewhere that a reader can find, buy a magazine, and off they go. What has actually changed radically is where you have something like iOS newsstand, and what you're seeing there is actually a screenshot of my iPad, so you can get an idea of the different things that I'm kind of reading. But Apple, in a way, they sort of care about publishers, but not really. The newsstand is really important for publishers, and it's a great place for them to display their products. But Apple will move forward with iOS, with different devices in the way that they want to do. And publishers, in a way, aren't really used to this. Their strategy has to be dictated by a technology company. But newsstand has proved hugely successful. And actually, again, looking at this presentation, it's about how we can monetize that. Alongside that, of course, you've got the sort of plethora of Android devices, and that also means you've got Google Play as the core Android sort of store. But with the experience that we've found is iOS tends to be still the kind of premium experience for consuming newsstand magazine and newspaper apps. But as more Android devices kind of develop, as the phones develop and the kind of two merge, then that will become more and more important as a market as well. So it's really important to be able to consider across both, because both have different ways of kind of functioning and working for a publisher as a strategy. So what does the actual market really look like? So what I thought I'd sort of do is have a look at kind of some of the key brands that are out there and doing, producing pretty good apps across the board, and are also doing very, very well in the mobile space as well. So that was what I came up with. It's purposely all overlaid, so it sort of demonstrates how many titles are out there in the market. And as you can kind of see from that, and I'm going to show you some examples of kind of what I would see as really good kind of mobile and app executions. I'm sure you'll have your own as well. But as you go through that, you can see there's a real mix. You have newspapers in there. You can see the Mail, the Telegraph, the Times, the Telegraph are all in there. You've then got different magazines through there. You've got Grazia, you've got Metro is a newspaper, but is kind of free on a daily basis. IPC just starting their strategy, so they're kind of coming to fruition. Condé Nast have had Wired as a multi-platform app for quite a while now, as of The Economist, and of course The Week. So there's lots of different ways, and again, one of the sort of challenges but also opportunities with this whole market is because there are lots of different ways to approach it. Publishers have approached it in many different ways. So that's both publishing platforms and the way they take their content out to market. The good news in all this is these products are starting to actually get quite good now. We are moving away from just that idea of a PDF replica with a little bit of interaction, but also, and again, please don't quote me too much on this, because this was me sort of looking and a bit of a knowledge about what the kind of active users are on a weekly basis. But that's the kind of audience that these apps will generate on a weekly basis, around 350 to 500,000 active users, so people that are going into the app and opening it proactively. Obviously, there's a debate that I think will continue on for a while about how you consistently measure the number of people, but active users, I think, is a key metric, and so that's developing very quickly. If you open that out further to mobile and you start looking at responsive sites, responsive content, then obviously you're well into the kind of millions across the board. So there's a really, really significant audience out there, but it's how you actually take that content and make it relevant. So to look at this in kind of three, I've kind of divided this up into three key areas when we're talking about monetization and showing me the money across apps and mobile. First is really platform and delivery. And actually one of the sponsors of this stage is Mag Plus, who provide one of the platforms, who I haven't mentioned, so I feel slightly bad about that. What I've sort of focused on here, and the reason I put Adobe versus HTML, that's not actually true, it's not versus at all. But the difference between those two platforms, Adobe, Mag Plus, solutions like that, Futurefolio I know are out there as well, they provide a kind of almost a non-coding solution. So if a magazine publisher wants to take their content out across it might be iOS tablet, it might be Android, it might be all screens. You've got to make that decision about whether you want to build something from scratch, do a lot of the coding. There are HTML platforms that are off the shelf as well, but there's a difference there. And the reason Adobe launched Digital Publishing Suite was exactly that. It allows, if you have a team of kind of guys that are really, really used to InDesign, you can produce a pretty good interactive magazine fairly simply. I use the word fairly cautiously there, but that's kind of the first decision really. What sort of platform are you going to be looking at to deliver your content? Secondly, this is the idea of create once, publish everywhere. That doesn't work for absolutely everybody, but really it's focused on responsive design. So again, as a user, if you're looking at a publishing app or you're looking at mobile app, that content's really got to work for you on that screen. It's got to be easy to access, it's got to be innovative, it's got to be intuitive as well. So that's a really big consideration. Just taking content from a magazine and just sort of sticking it into an app really isn't sort of good enough now as the market develops. Then it's about what the content looks like. Is it enhanced? Is it new content? Is it duplicate content from the magazine? Is it a mix of both? All considerations in getting the content right and sort of listening and asking the user. And then it's the idea of how you resource it up. As publishers, all publishers don't have a huge amount of money to spend on these kind of projects, or maybe they do, depends on who you are, but it is a decision on how you actually create, build and fund this kind of project. And then finally, it's the reach. I mean, for me personally, launching this kind of product now, iPad, Android, tablets and mobile should all be considered right from the start, because you don't want to have one product that you then need to completely rebuild to go onto multiple platforms. So very, very important to sort of start with that. A quote which isn't from anyone famous particularly, but he is speaking later, is a guy that we work with very closely called Rob Boynes. If you're not testing, you're just guessing. And actually, that does ring true across the board, and publishers can be quite guilty of that. It's about asking the user, but it's also about testing, and once it's live, about continuing to iterate the product because it's always in development. The next part of kind of developing a mobile app strategy and monetizing it is about reader revenue. And again, subscription model, going back to that, and it's something that we'll explore in the panel in the next couple of minutes, but the idea of, do you want the reader to be buying individual issues? Do you want them to be subscribing and buying multiple issues? Do you want to lock them in for a whole year? That's kind of the best strategy. All of that kind of needs to be then integrated into the kind of platform that you're going to be developing. And then about marketing communication. Marketing communication in this space is hard because there isn't any set way of marketing. You can't use Apple because they won't do any marketing for you at all unless they like your app and then they'll promote it. Android's a little easier, but it's finding the right readers across different platforms and working that marketing communication out. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that in the panel as well and look at some of our experiences. But leading on to that, a term that we use quite a lot within Dennis is the idea of a super fan. So this is somebody that subscribes to your print, uses your digital product, and also subscribes to the app as one whole holistic kind of view. And so they're very, very involved with the way that the brand develops across apps and mobile. And then kind of finally, is considering ways to monetize content. So, we now live in a world where I won't say everything's for sale because that would be damaging editorial integrity almost immediately. But with an app, you could have certain parts of content that are paid for, considering things like a Spotify-style subscription, which is either on or off rather than individual issues. Lots of different ways of being able to kind of get readers to pay for your content when that's delivered across multiple screens. So that's the second one. And then we go to the evil that is advertising. So advertising revenue is extremely important in this space. It should always be part of the revenue model and something that we've been very, very focused on with work again within Dennis Publishing and is happening right across the board. So first of all, do you duplicate the ads from a print product and just run them in the app version? Do you take the ads that are on the website and duplicate them in the mobile version? Probably not, actually, because the solution of it being interactive, being bespoke for that screen, being bespoke for that product is really important. And again, something that we'll look at on the panel is around advertising the delivery of it and the user experience you can actually get when you're within an app environment or a mobile environment. That's really, really important. So it's almost to not be afraid of that and being able to deliver great ads. And actually, clients are really buying into that now. Team structure and knowledge is really important. I mean, I think almost this is one of the most important things because selling apps in this kind of environment, the platform, etc., you need a team that are knowledgeable, not just about the brand itself or the product itself, but also about the platform. So it's really important you've got a team that are able to go out and kind of push that knowledge to the market to win the kind of advertising business. Numbers. It's very easy, especially with the lack of consistency across the board, really, in apps, to not sort of promise or want to promise or deliver on numbers. But now it's more important than ever that active users, dwell times, page views, they're all things that are really imperative to winning advertising business. So it's about being transparent. I'll put this as stitch or serve because, again, ads can be in set positions, they can be served in, they can be every fourth swipe. There are lots of different kind of options and opportunities. I think the most important thing from that point, though, is maximizing the number of times, obviously, a user can see an ad without breaking the user experience. So, about developing the number of page views, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really, really important, too. And then finally, it's about innovation and revenue streams again. Sponsored content, interactive ads that you can charge more of a premium for, locked off content that advertisers can sponsor that way. There's all sorts of different ways that you can actually monetize advertising within apps and within mobile. And it's important to be constantly focused on innovation. Help clients, help them to develop their kind of ad message within apps and the kind of mobile space as well. So they're the kind of three sort of key areas for actually the way that I would see it to actually monetize apps and mobile. My kind of final really thought, I thought, well, it's all very well me talking about this and going, do this and consider this and have a think about this. But actually, I'll pick 4 apps, which I'll just give you kind of one line on as I go through. And these are apps that I use regularly. And the reason I use them regularly, Metro, when they launched their app and developed it initially, had mobile in mind because all the people that read Metro are pretty much traveling, commuting to and from work, etc. So they had to make it a product that worked brilliantly on mobile. So it's optimized for both smartphone and tablet. And they've also got a morning and an evening edition now. So lots of opportunities to see. So that does work very, very well together. I've picked the Telegraph, if I'm honest, as well. A lot of the newspapers now, the Times do this too, they kind of pull you into almost a club. So the Telegraph content's available across everything. It's a website, it's a tablet app, it's a mobile app. It'll tell you what to do at the weekend before you go away for the weekend as well. So you're a member of that kind of subscriber club. And I think that works very, very well and is a very good model to follow. And of course works well for newspapers because of the amount of content they're producing. Kerrin, the CEO of The Week, would tell me off if I didn't mention The Week, but it is an important example, one of the first apps to launch on an HTML platform. But the reason I show The Week is it's very much about the super fan. This is where we've kind of developed very, very loyal fans who read the content across multiple platforms. And there is a different execution for The Week in digital as well. So that's really an important product, and is developing very quickly. And then the last one, and it doesn't actually say the name of the mag on here, but this is Evo. And the reason I bring this up is because it's a different approach to creating an app. So what you've actually got here is an interactive news feed that's updated on a weekly basis, but is within an app environment. If you subscribe, you get all the content. If you don't subscribe, you get some of the content. And then when you go into one of these articles, it then looks and feels like a magazine. So again, this is a different way of approaching almost the user interface, the UI, with an app. And again, it allows you to access more users because you can find the app through YouTube, you can find the app through social media, and it's a different experience when you hit it. So that's just one. It's just examples to kind of create a bit of food for thought. My final slide won't work because I can't get online. This is an example of an ad. Basically, if I were to be able to click through, the droplets would be dripping down, there'd be a nice overlay of the lipstick, her lips would change colour, I'd be able to move the lips around, all sorts of stuff happens on there. And again, this for me is a very good example of an ad that is optimised for different screens. So this was created for tablet, for mobile, and it really focuses on both advertising UX and allowing the user to play around and increase dwell time. So that's the kind of combination of both, really. Okay, right, so that's, I'm sure you're sort of bored of my voice now. So that's my kind of intro, if you like, my run-through presentation on monetising apps. So we're now going to move over to the esteemed panel. I do feel quite a long way away from them. I feel like I'm presenting to them with this headphone. Hello, panel. Just to, are you on? Do you want to say something, just so I know you're there?
Mary had a little lamb.
There we are.
Did you hear that?
Well, they move forward, though, the mics. I'm conscious I also have a very loud voice, so when you mic me up, I'm like, hello!
White as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, I think I'm coming on now.
That's it.
Okay, good.
That's my first question. So to make things easy for you, I think just to open it up, in terms of what I've been talking about, apps and mobile, just going left to right, let me know, well, a bit more of an in-depth introduction to yourself, and tell me your favourite app and why.
Okay. So I'm Matt White, and I'm Creative Director at Adnostic, so I work with John. And I head up the design and development team creating the ads that he's talking about in bespoke HTML5. Favourite app? Well, because I use it throughout the day, so I'm going to have to go for Feedly, basically because I think it comes to a content delivery platform from a web point of view rather than a print point of view. And it's fantastic.
Wow.
It's like my favourite gig. It's trails.
Oh, nice. Come on, man.
Okay. And it's fantastic across all the different platforms. What a really good holistic experience that caters for a really fragmented market that you've been talking about.
I'm Guy Phillipson, the Chief Exec of the Internet Advertising Bureau. I used to be an advertiser as head of advertising at Vodafone like 10 years ago, so that was when the internet was quite young. IAB started in 1997 for online, basically. 6 years ago, we started mobile IAB, and my mobile team are actually out in Barcelona looking at things like the new Samsung launch today, but I'm delighted to be here today. IAB does research for mobile and tablets across the UK and Europe. We do education. We have something like 10 to 20 events every year based on mobile, including Mobile Engage, which is in May at the Mermaid Centre, if you want to go along on that, 15th of May. And one of the big things we do, of course, is measure things like ad spend, consumer acceptance of ads, and how well prepared clients are for advertising on mobile. I've seen a lot of great apps up there. I'm a racing fan. And I do hold a bit of a candle for the Racing Post app, actually. I think it won an award for one of the best apps. It works really well on mobile and on tablet. Obviously, it's got good news about things like the doping scandal at Godolphin. It's got Tom Segal, who's great on PriceWise, but it uses data really well. Racing and betting world actually relies on data, being able to cut it any which way you like. So it'll do your horses, it'll do your trainers, it'll do your jockeys, it'll do your form, and you can drill down any which way, and you can even go straight to a betting exchange off it, which of course I never do. Thank you.
My name's Abby Spooner. I head up the direct marketing team on The Week, and I was heading up the team when we first launched the Week's iPad app back at the end of 2011. And I was really involved in putting together our bundling strategy, so being able to sell digital and print and both of those things together right from the outset, which is possibly the hardest thing I've ever worked on. However, moving on from there, we've now looking at growing stuff right across the board, whether that being still growing our print circulation, but also what we can do to get out there and start growing digital-only subscriptions a bit more. Oh, my favourite app, a bit controversial here because it's not specifically a publishing one, but I have to say that without Citymapper, I probably wouldn't have got here on time this morning. I think it's a cracking app, and it does the one thing that I think as publishers we all need to be aware of, which is delivering the right information to customers at exactly the right time, and I think it does that brilliantly.
Just looking at time, so I'm going to pick 3 key questions, I think, for this to go for the panel. The first one, I'm actually going to look at how important advertising is within the mobile market. So just generally how important and significant it is. So, Guy, I'm going to pick on you to start on that one, please.
Okay. Mobile advertising has grown exponentially. If you take 5 years ago, it was worth just 37 million in the UK. This year, for 2013, I believe it's going to be £1 billion market on its own for mobile and tablet. And that will have been growing in triple figures, so 130% growth year on year. Of course, with apps and mobile, we're really talking about display. I believe we're going to be looking at $250 million for the display market for 2013. And that's going to represent a whopping 20% of total digital display. Now that could be a world record, I don't know, but the percentage of digital which is going onto mobile has been creeping up all the time, so 20%. The other thing to watch is mobile video, which from a very low base is growing in 4 figures. So for the first half of 2013, it grew from about 3 to 24 million. But when we see little kids springing up in the market like that, that is definitely one to watch alongside branded content. So hopefully that's a little run through.
Yeah. Just to get, because again, from my point of view, talking about apps, but actually to get some context to actually the size of the advertising market and why it's so important. Following on from that, I guess the other way to look at it is often on mobile, advertising isn't a particularly pleasant experience. It's often pushed at you. So again, talking about advertising and advertising creative, what are the panel's kind of thoughts on that? Again, Matt, I'll probably start with you, with your job title as creative director.
Guess that'll be me. I think what the advertising market needs to catch up with, specifically on tablet, but definitely in mobile generally, is to treat the marketing and advertising digitally world as a complementary user experience. Too often on a very long coach journey from Oxford every day, I read about 3 or 4 different papers and going through, I'm very disappointed to find lots and lots of very flat ads, PDF replicas, terms and conditions you can't read, ultimately delivering a very poor user experience and letting down the client, the agency and the host app in lots of different ways. I know that it's not an easy thing to crack and that there's lots of print and digital budgetary issues that need to be cracked as well first to get online, but to then deliver ads that are produced from a kind of software and a UX kind of point of view to deliver innovative and engaging experiences is the only way to really take advantage of what people term now kind of lean back experience. People are prepared to engage if there is something worth playing with, and we know because we've been playing with a lot of custom metrics to find out how much engagement people are willing to have. And with quite a lot of content, we can find sort of analogous to a long dwell time. That Rimmel ad that was shown earlier on was a wonderful example. Lots of people played with that. It wasn't about buy now for the lipstick. You might not want to buy a lipstick immediately when you're on the train or anywhere else. But lots of people played with the drawing around in the background. Lots of people played around with the different kind of lipstick colours and changing the rest of it. And even I was proved wrong by the fact that you could move the kiss around. And I said, nobody will ever do that. And thousands of people did that, and I was proven wrong by it. So people will take time to engage with a brand, and that surely is the most important thing from an agency and client point of view.
Thank you. Abby, how can I keep this nice and simple? How do we monetize apps in terms of reader revenue? What's the kind of key strategy that you would say? So
when we first launched on the week, we were looking at our existing audience and how we could leverage that to drive the initial take-up of the app. And what we found was if you take your print subscribers and then encourage them to move on to what we've called bundle subscriptions, which is print plus digital. As we've grown all the different platforms across the week, we've given people, if you have a digital subscription, you can access the magazine in any platform that you choose. And that's proved really, really positive for us. Not only have we had a large proportion of our audience move to that, but once they've moved, they've become, as John says, super fans. They have higher retention rates, and we know, and I've heard from a number of speakers at various events from the national press, that the more you can get someone to engage with your brand, the more loyal that they become. And we're certainly seeing that in terms of what we're doing. So what we're starting to see is a gradual shift over in terms of new acquisitions to getting people on board for what we're calling a full subscription package. So it engages with that kind of emotional, I want the full package, I want everything. That means I want to access it on my tablet, I want to access the magazine on my mobile when I'm stuck on a bus somewhere, and it's giving people the free range to come to us. And what's fabulous about these people is that they're paying us slightly more, so they pay about £10 more on average, and also they are more loyal and staying with us for longer.
Now, I think we're on to the last few minutes now, so what I'll do, unless the panel have any more burning points that they'd like to make before we go over to the audience, I'll open it out to you to ask any questions of the panel or myself. Actually, no, just the panel. Oh.
Hi, I'm Tom Peterson, Last Word Media. When coming up with the design and style of going onto a tablet and smartphone, there's a huge distinction between those who are trying to stay in a print mentality versus going for like The Guardian, which is a website mentality. Do the panel have any opinions on what works better from a user point of view, or any kind of recommendations or potential pitfalls to avoid?
Great question. I think that the pitfalls there are coming from, if you come from the print end of that sort of polemic scale, you're not really taking advantage of the medium that the content is being consumed in. You can get lost in skeuomorphic details like page turns and like newsstand used to look like a bookshelf, which was really annoying for me. I know that it caters into, there's a purpose for it for people who don't understand, but I think that a little bit more credence needs to be given to the user, because even my 65 plus old parents now don't need to be queued up to use whatever app it is they're using, whether it's a game or a kind of content delivery service. So I think that the idea of the Guardian's point of view, that coming from a kind of take advantage of the device, take advantage of many years worth of user experience kind of studies and data from the web world that then moved into a sort of responsive design approach to websites. That's where you need to come from, I think. There's no point losing all of the paradigms of how people consume print, because some of them do overlap. But I think it's a mistake to start solely from how do I turn paper into a screen.
Do you think that location actually opens up a load more opportunities as well? I mean, say Time Out, for example, they can cut it any which way, whether it's entertainment, film, music, it knows where you are, it can direct you to where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the experience now, from whether you're using either operating system or, like, this morning Android was telling me when I should have left for work and what was around me and where I could get a cappuccino, it knew what I wanted to do. The same way that The Guardian may be able to tell me what films are nearby, or an advert can tell what the weather is like and maybe suggest a coffee instead of a Stella Artois, which has happened. So there's lots of kind of like geo-targeting opportunities, definitely.
And what about dynamic content? So kind of, is it machine learning where it learns more about me? So it knows that in sport, for example, I actually want to know about the derby and not the FA Cup?
Yeah, so I think the best examples of that, again, are probably with the Android operating system, although apps do take that kind of learned kind of behavioural approach. Android is quite scary. You may say, well, I don't want to give my data to Google, but you do get a lot back. If you get your first Android phone, you're in for a shock when it pops the thing and tells you like where you're supposed to be, how long it is to work. And, like, I didn't tell you where I worked. Yeah. And then it tells you when the next Arsenal game is on. It's like, I didn't tell you I supported Arsenal. No. It gets a bit scary, but then you find out you do have this kind of digital personal assistant going on. So as long as there's something back.
There's a value exchange, I think, but at least we always have to say allow when it's location.
Yes.
So that's something.
I think we've got one more question at the front.
Hi. Quick question on the title of the show, Show Me the Money. We've all heard about data, we've all heard about advertising, we've all heard about subscription. How much is Dennis and the champion of the Dennis portfolio, The Week, still debating internally about data, subscription or revenue through advertising?
I don't know how much of that is kind of debating internally. I think it's at the moment it's just trying to make sure that we're taking every opportunity that we can. I think in terms of getting people locked into a subscription and an ongoing relationship, that's something that The Week has been doing since launch and has been going very successfully. And I think in many ways what we're doing on the subscription side is simply taking everything that we've learned in the last 18 years and working out how that works in a digital world.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of follow on from that as well, I think it's just data does become extremely important in this because the usual rules of marketing a product they're not necessarily completely out of the window, are they? But they are, it's a lot tougher to access the kind of people that you want. So you've got to be able to use the data in a very, very clever way. So as you say, any kind of opportunity that we can to get the right data about the right users, then, it's taking that opportunity. Just check if I've got one more question. Questions basically, so running a children's titles essentially, so advertising isn't a revenue stream. I feel this might be a question I have to answer quickly. So can apps be profitable without advertising, basically? That's a really good question. It's like, to be honest, I think being really, really honest, that is tricky because the reason I put the kind of 3 key revenue streams is because those 3 do really need to work in tandem. Because again, it's not about the sort of model even where you pay for an app and then you don't get advertising, as long as advertising is presented in the right way. I think though, you could look at it, and I don't want to be too controversial, but about how can you monetize potentially content. So as long as the parent's paying for it, you could create an app that has kind of games and things like that that are potentially, so in-app purchasing could be part of the subscription model. So it's not just about the actual just specific reader revenue to buy the app. So I think it's maybe thinking of it in those ways, give you more potential to kind of monetize it if advertising.
John, what about looking at a site like Stardoll, for example, which was developed in Scandinavia, where you can buy clothes and makeup, and I guess with parental permission.
Yeah, parental permission, of course.
That you're basically monetizing the content on the site to have a prettier looking dolly.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, it's thinking about that. I think we're kind of out of time. What time is it now? We've gone about 5 minutes. Just one more question. So the movement of print subscribers to digital.
It's still happening. So the way that we do it is as people are coming up to the end of their subscriptions, we're encouraging them to upgrade. So over the last two or so years, we're looking at sort of between 10 and 25% of people gradually kind of moving over. It's also something else that it's also depending how much we're pushing them. So if it's the right moment on their subscription, we want to give the right messaging to people at the right time. If you've just started a print subscription, it's a great opportunity to say sampling. But if you're halfway through and very happy, you start saying how does that message work and how do you kind of move that forward. But gradually you see more and more people taking that up.
Okay, all right guys, well thank you very much for your time. I'd like to say thank you to the panel, to Matt, Guy and Abby, thank you for their time.